Well, it's Saturday afternoon. I was hoping to have a day off from Dahlias today, but with a forecast of 2 to 3 degrees tonight, which means a potential frost, I thought I'd better come up and do some photography, getting some of the photographs that I haven't got yet, and maybe just do a last walk around the trial plots to let you see what's what, because it could be the last chance this year. So part one was effectively last night, so we'll treat this as part two. So continuing on, there's a few varieties we've had over from America, sent over as effectively like a lucky dip. We get a box full of tubers. Never quite sure what they're going to be until the flower. So this one, bearing in mind the wind, is Hilltop Kemper. And then we have Hilltop Lost Treasure, which is nice strong plant, sort of salmony apricot, as you can see from there, quite a coarse semi-cactus. The next one along is a variety called Just Married, which is a medium semi-fimbriated variety, which does look very colour, quite a nice compact grower. Nice blends you can see from there of sort of like a cream in the middle, creamy green actually going back to a pink, and would actually probably make quite a good garden variety. Good sturdy plants, bearing in mind the wind that's been through here in the last few days, 60, 70 mile an hour winds. Can't really complain too much of that as to how well they've stood. This is a variety Sunrise Surprise, which is quite bright, 4 foot, 5 foot plants, yellow, orange to reds blends, suitable for the garden. Not quite sure what we're doing with those. Lady Darlene, which is, you can get available in packets, but I thought we'd try it. There was quite a few pictures of this on Facebook last year, and I thought we'd give it a go, but I have to admit I'm not a fan. And then tartan, which is in one way very exciting, rich purple and white, but very sparse for flowering in comparison with other varieties. This was sent across from the States as Holly Hill Black Widow. I'm sure I saw it darker than this last year when we grew it inside. It still makes a nice flower, sort of more like old-fashioned decorative type flower. You're certainly good for cutting with a colour like that. This is a variety called Requiem, which is actually quite an old variety. We've been looking for something as a good cut flower in this colour range, which was reliable and weatherproof, and this does fit the bill. Problem with filming this time in the afternoon again is the sun's behind me, making it a little bit tricky to avoid being in the shadow, so apologies. I've gone through the trial beds as such, varieties that were being sent rather than we've asked for. This is Abigail Lauren from Roger Downting, a seedling from Jamanda, as I understand it, and you can see that from the habit of the plant, the foliage to a degree, and the formation of it, and I suppose you've got the colour of it as well. Unfortunately the best blooms were taken out by the wind the other day, so what we've got is young blooms to assess. Definitely like miniature ball sort of formation, and I'm presuming those hard centres will come out as the flower develops. This yellow seedling coming up was from Alan Fisher in America, as yet an unnamed seedling. So unfortunately the wind's taken this out as well, plenty centre on there. certainly glowing. If it's standing there, you'd be able to see it probably better. This one coming up is interesting for the future, a potential 2020 release, one of Les Stoddart's varieties. It's Blighton Garnet, which is a good, rich, purpley red with excellent form. Trying to work out classification wise on this one, and although it's been regarded as probably as a deck, if we're looking at taking petal out from roughly like halfway, we're looking there at something being involuted at more than half its length just, and quite a rounded blunt ended petal, which would suggest the formation is more a ball. Although when you look at it, the petals on the flower itself do look slightly pointed, but only very, very slightly. And this is one of the problems I think we're getting is your ball decks and deck balls. But I do like the colour and I do like the form of it. As you'd expect with some of the ride ones, you do get the odd white petal there. This is one of our Alan's own seedlings, Alan Burnett. He takes a few seeds, collects them every year, and he's excited about this one. It's a small cactus, the first like fully double one for him, and it stood the wind, no problem at all. It's only a second year seedling, so we'll plant that again and have another look at it, but it's certainly good for cutting. Good strong stems, easy to grow. This variety I've already shown on the previous video I did yesterday, which is Alan's Gold, which is a different kettle of fish outside. Looks much neater, much tighter, not quite as big a flower, slightly front facing, but it certainly looks as if it's worth considering for growing another year. Plenty petal in there, and is getting a reasonable amount of depth to it as well. I'd like to see these in a few more days time, and hopefully I might. But if the forecast is as it is tonight, then these might be singed with frost by tomorrow. And I wish I'd been able to see this one before the wind took some blooms out. Seedling from Gabby Hayes, which is Twilight Boy. Lovely colour. But we'll try that again like next year. Blooms there being a bit battered with growth that was amongst it. And problem is with this area here, these few beds being so exceptionally dry, they're not too far away from these great big sycamore trees. So in the morning they get a little bit of shade. You can see some of the branches that got blown off before on Wednesday, so that shows how much wind there was. So lucky that these are all standing, but because of those big group of trees there, it does get very, very dry in this plot. Coming up, this is Eric Booth's Spennythorn Pam, which looks to have a very, very neat formation. Stood up well to the weather. Looks to have a nice pointed petal to it until we actually end up pulling one out halfway down, trying to pull one out halfway down. And then we see it's involuted for well over more than half its length. It's almost rolled around on itself. And when you look in there closely, you can see. So again, I suppose it's what we're classifying this one as. But I think we'll be growing this again. I do like it. It's a different colour to what we have available. And it's a nice neat formation, but worth another go. This variety from Roger Downton looked stunning before the winds came. purely a garden variety. It's like the old-fashioned decoratives were, much more flat petal throughout, but very free, great for cutting, masses of blooms on it, lovely blend of pink through to white, but as you can see it's been hammered with the wind. This one's Jack's Desire. This is a miniature kiwi that people keep talking about, a miniature trellis kiwi, except it's not. It's Judi Andromeda, one of Peter Greenway's varieties that we've introduced this year. Miniature cactus, but does need getting plenty of flowers growing up on it to keep the size down, otherwise it's a small. It had some lovely blooms down at Harrogate, but they certainly wouldn't have gone through the miniature ring. And I wish I'd had an entry for the small cactus championship. But very, very free. No, I've done no restricting on these, no disbudding. If the mistake I have made is not really having a chance to give them a double stop so I could get the flower size down. But as the seasons develop and the flowers are becoming smaller, the flowers on the side shoots are much more to the right size. And it goes right to the back in this lovely lavendery flush in the centre of the bloom, particularly on the younger ones. Makes this fairly outstanding, I think. And then Judi Borealis, which is free flowering, but it's not quite there, and it's the one that I don't think, well, I won't be continuing. I'll work out some way of making sure there's something done with the stock, so that somebody has it, but it's probably a really good garden variety, as it's free and it stood up to the wind no problem. Judi Capella, I messed up with this one by not really having enough plants to put out, and what I did have were very small, so it's only just coming into a flush now, but this is very neat and tidy. Plenty of petals to get a good depth on it, and this has potential. Another of Peter's is Judi Mercury. Again, very, very free, but I think it only has potential as a garden variety. It's too flat topped, I think, to make a good exhibition one. You know, although there was one or two reasonable vases out. But you'll see what I mean when you sort of, well, actually that bloom doesn't look as bad as I thought, but it is quite gappy. And quite often has a bit of an isolated centre to it. And then Judi Pluto, which has been absolutely magnificent this year. Last year I was a bit worried that it was too thin on the petal. This year I cut 15 blooms without really looking at them to take down to Harrogate. I could have cut 30 odd blooms. I put 2 vases of 5 up, one in the single vase class, and used 1 vase with Judi Hercules in the 2 vase class. I think there were 7 entries in the single vase, and I was second with it, which surprised me because I'd got a bit weary of staging by then after doing all our stand. But it does make a nice flower. Certainly very easily goes through the miniature ring without really having to check it over. And it's just been flush after flush of flowers on it. Nice tidy little blooms. This is Judi Polaris, which we've introduced this year. This is at the trials at Golden Acre. I know Ian and Stuart used it in the display at Southport. It's a lovely white, needs plenty up on it. I've found it a little bit late flowering, but again, that's my stopping times. It's when we've got the plants available, when we have the time to do things, rather than trying to aim for certain things. But it has suffered with the wind a little bit in that there's a few plants being taken out, but it certainly has stood up to the wind in that there's no marking on these blooms. and that is just turning around fairly open. I thought this year I'd know what I was doing with Judi satin. It was thin on the early blooms last year, and it was thin earlier blooms this year. And then as I've just left it and not bothered stopping it, and we haven't done any disbudding on it, as we get onto all the side shoots and the second flushes, etc., the blooms have actually got fuller and better. And it's certainly took the weather again, as in there's no blooms marked. They've hardly even suffered from being battered against each other. There's still centres there. There's depth on nearly all of the ones, even on the side shoots now. So I'm not certain. At the start of the season it looked more like a dirty yellow, but it now looks very nice, and if nothing else, it's a really good free flowering variety for the garden. This variety is Trellin Joan, which is a sort of almost a star collarette, magnet for the bees and butterflies when it's not as windy and cool as it is today. Very strong grower. Those plants are approaching 5 foot high. And that's the beauty of these open centered ones, isn't it? My collarette, Dudden Catherine, which has suffered with the wind through there. Collar's a bit too long, and that's free flowering, but no. Then we have Western Pearl outside, which has suffered with the wind, snapped a few stems off, but the flowers aren't bruised. They haven't been scorched or anything, which some do. Just the stems have snapped off, which is not surprising, the ferocity of the winds. Walking up, this is unfortunately just past its best now, and again the winds haven't helped. This is seedling from Phil Godsmark, which at first I thought was very similar to Clearview Daniel, but when I've compared it, it's a bigger flower, petals a bit more open, very neat, very strong, very windproof, and it's a richer yellow than Clearview Daniel. So I'll have to try and grow that one again. What I'm showing you now isn't really doing it justice, so bear that one in mind, but it has been looking much better than this. Then this here is Maisie Taylor from Roger Downton. A bit of a Germander look to that, or Mary's Germander look to that rather, because it's obviously pink, this one. This one's from America, sort of an incurving cactus, but it has suffered with the wind, so when I was thinking it would be a good garden variety, it's with it all this marking on the back of it, it sort of put me off it a little bit. It looked very nice the other day though, so I suppose I've got to look at it. Well, if it's not windy, it will be a very good garden variety. It's free and good stems, and it's colourful, quite attractive in a way. And then John Willett's Normandy Memories. We've had all these winds on, do keep breaking out all these winds we've had. And I'm really surprised that we have got so many blooms that I can actually show you. The Judi Titan. the sunburst, which my intention is to select one plant out of these and just try again with it, because we have got a little bit of variability in the amount of tipping that's on it. It's sort of like maroon cerise with the yellow base. This is Dave Bates' large palm guard beacon, which we've done no disbudding on that. We just basically left it. It's got a bit untidy looking, unfortunately, after the week that we've had, but it's still standing. And I did feel when we're cutting this for Harrogate, or I was cutting this for Harrogate, that this has a good bit of potential. Hallmark. I'm hoping I'll be able to keep the stock from this going, and might have some limited numbers available for next year, but not promising at the minute. But this looks really clean and I do like it. I think we had it in the catalogue many moons ago when I was just a wee ben. Then Ivor's Rhonda. These have taken the full brunt of the wind, this row, so surprised they're standing at all. And then this is John's Twilight, which is going to be synonymous, I'm sure, with Hollywood Twilight. I know some of the varieties I've mentioned aren't necessarily new, but they are in some cases new to us, or I brought them back again. This is Wales Rhonda, that's been out for a while. Taking the very, very brunt of the wind. You know, if you look around and if you look beyond the big trees there, and if you can this year. Just to finish off this section is just a few of our own seedlings. This colorette, which I took down to Wisley last year, Hadrian's Eclipse. Not as well this year. It's a bit sparser on flowers and on foliage and growth, not as free flowering as I remember it, but still very bright. And then this catches people's eye. Hadrian's Orchid. Wasn't quite why I was called it that. We're just trying to get away from numbers, to be honest. That's only a temporary name. With a bit of a sort of star-shaped colorette. Very colourful. And this is another one that's been a bit standing down. A few tips after that for the wind. That one's getting more sunshine. On there. marking on the back. Quite nice actually, if you like that sort of thing. That one's showing the marking just like a little bit better there. And then this is a very bright yellow anemone from a gentleman called Alan Tomlinson, who brought a few seedlings in. He brings me a few every year to have a look at, and this caught my eye. And this is another one of his that were called, it's a primrose anemone one. So that's the end of effectively part 2. But just to show that we are still standing, this is what we're like Saturday afternoon.